Hi and welcome. I'm Steve Martireno, and this is the Behavioral Corner. You're invited to hang with us as we discuss the ways we live today, the choices we make, the things we do, and how they affect our health and well-being. So you're on the corner, the Behavioral Corner. Please hang around a while. So here we are back on the Behavioral Corner, working our way through this very strange holiday season. And we hope, we hope you found us here. What we do is we gather and we talk about the way we behave, the things we do, the choices we make, and how all of them together constitute our behavioral health, or not constitute, but impact our behavioral health. The choices we make, the things we do affect us mentally, physically, spiritually. So we bring lots of diverse kinds of people together to talk about those things. Now, in the past, we have done a great deal about substance abuse, both from a clinical standpoint and also from first-person accounts of getting sober, maintaining sobriety. We've been doing that for many, many years on this program and others I've been involved in. We have never, during that period of time, it occurs to me, ever done a show about compulsive gambling. And it's not because compulsive gambling isn't on par with any other kind of addictive behavior you can think about. It's just we just haven't done it. It's what referred to in the field as a process addiction. It's not a substance you are addicted to or have a disorder, but it's a behavior. And there are many forms of that. I mean, we're now seeing an emerging internet or social media addictive behavior. People can't put their phones down. It hasn't impacted their lives negatively yet, but it may. And it'll be characterized as one of these process disorders. But gambling is the one, because most of us are familiar with the notion of compulsive or out of control gambling. To that end, we're really lucky to run into a fellow by the name of Matt Bloom. Matt joins us from his home in Florida, and Matt is 51-year-old, family man, father, husband, who overcame a very serious compulsive gambling problem and now has had it under control for going on 19 years. So he speaks from a really broad range of expertise about this, and we're glad he stopped by the corner with us. Matt, thanks, man. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Just before we came on, my producer guy who makes sure I don't have anything behind me, in the shot, if we use the video, he said, get that off the door. I have a question for you. It's not a big deal. I don't want you to do anything about it. The heart that's on the wall behind you, that's framed like a diamond, right?
Yeah, it's kind of
yeah. Okay, go on like this.
I think my wife kind of did it, but on purpose.
It looks like a female touch of artistic. Yeah. Anyway, did I get all that right? 51.
You did.
Years old. How many kids do you have?
I got two boys. 19 and 16.
Wow. Well, we're going to talk about your life between 19 and 16, which is a lot different, hopefully, than your sons are going to be. So going on 19 years of getting this thing under control, let's talk a little bit about gambling disorder. What was the first bet you ever made? Do you remember?
That's a good question. I don't really recall my first wager, but what I do remember was when I was probably about 13 or so. I remember my father, who was also a compulsive gambler, came into my room, was knocking on my door room in the middle of the winter and said he was going to the track and wondering if I could, loan him $40. So I guess technically that was my first wager because I gave it to him because I felt bad. I didn't know what was going on.
Right. So, how old were you?
I was probably around 13 or so. Yeah.
Right.
Something like that. But that wasn't really when I started to really, get involved with it. Probably say in my early 20s, that's when kind of not only did my first wager take place, but that's when I started having a lot of mental health issues that were kind of triggered, and where my life started to kind of go in that path of destructive nature.
Mm-hmm. I want to get into that ahead. When you say your dad, who was also a compulsive gambler, when did you become aware of that? Was it later on when your gambling was out of control, or did you notice it before you had the problem?
No, I kind of knew he was a bit of a gambler when I was kind of young. I would say probably right around that time, or maybe a couple of years before, because he would always go to. I don't know if you probably do remember that back on the East Coast they used to have OTB,
Oh
and
yeah.
so he would always go to OTB all the time, and he'd have those little tickets, next to his, money. And my mother would, get all upset about it, and so I kind
Yeah.
of there was something going on. I mean, I was so young, I didn't really know that there was,
Yeah.
compulsive gambling or addiction to alcohol or anything like that. I was too young to realize it, but yeah,
Mhm.
probably right around there.
Yeah. For people who don't know what OTB is, it was off-track betting. It was the state of New York. I don't know if it went other places, but it certainly, when I was living in New York, it was a very big deal. They were going to legalize off-track betting and open up these parlors all over the city. And the New York State, as I remember this, Matt, became the first entity in the history of gambling to go broke. It
Yep.
just it just shows you why people don't trust the government a lot. They couldn't handle the action at racetracks. They actually lost money. It was outrageous. But yeah, it's interesting because I asked you about the time frame. You're talking about 30 years ago when your father comes in, more than that now, and asked you for a couple of bucks to go to the track. And when you're 20 and you're gambling, that's 30 years ago. The world was a different place, with regards in every way, but with regards to gambling 30 years ago, there wasn't a casino on every corner. There were state lotteries, that's for sure, but there weren't casinos every 15 minutes. There was no legalized sports betting, which just recently happened. So when you started out, you were gambling with friends, or a bookmaker, or who were you gambling with?
That's a great question, Steve. So, I was fortunate enough in my early 20s to have a very lucrative career, but unfortunately worked with a group of people that have destructive behaviors, and I kind of caught on to all of it. Not to blame any of them for my behavior. However, I kind of went with run with or work with the Joneses, as we would call them back then. So, I started going to casinos and, like you said, placing wagers with bookmakers. I had multiple bookmakers. And I mean, I'd even do as craziest things as, sit out on the golf course. And, I'd say to somebody, because this is how sick I was, I'd say I could take this golf ball and throw it further than you can, for X amount of dollars. So yeah, anything and anything we could think of at that time. But
Yeah.
mostly, I would say it was more focused, or let's say geared towards sports betting, and going to like Atlantic City was a big thing back then, because the people that I worked around, we were Wall Street guys, and that's kind of how we did things back then.
So you were in a field already and surrounded by people who were risk takers. They wanted they liked it out there on the edge, right?
They love the action: drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, you name it.
I don't think people understand sometimes what that's all about, and I think they think of it in simplistic terms. I mean, somebody involved in Wall Street or even in gambling, it's not the money. The money's how you keep score, right?
Well,
Was that your experience? I mean, it's nice to win money, and it's bad to lose money, but it's sort of just the medium to allow you to take those risks and get that rush.
yeah, I mean, back then it was the rush, it was the money, and sometimes it wasn't even about making money. It was about, how much could you lose? Because if you lost, that was always the thing. Walking around the office, the big shot lost X versus, someone won, a couple $100, which was really no big deal to anybody back then working on Wall Street. But today, money's in its proper place for me. It's not about the money. Back then, it was always about, my life was consumed around money, and that's some of the things that actually led me to, the way that my brain was functioning was surrounded around money.
When you mentioned earlier that there were other, I guess, co-occurring mental health issues you were going through, what sorts of things were you battling in addition to compulsive gambling during that time?
Yes, probably around, I would say, 25-ish. I started to, feel a sense of depression, and it got really bad to the point of I was completely immobilized at times. It would be somewhat towards the fall part of the year, and then once the spring kind of hit, everything went back to kind of normal. But what I didn't realize was that it really wasn't normal. It was actually going in the complete opposite direction, because at the time, someone had said, "Oh, well, you must, you must have some sort of, call it
Seasonal disorder.
seasonal affective disorder." I couldn't get it out, but thanks for
Yeah.
reminding me, because it's been so many years. And that being said, I started taking some medication for depression, and a couple of years went by, and then I kind of snapped and had a manic episode, and ended up in a hospital for a couple of days. I mean, my wife just couldn't deal with me anymore. She just said, go. And I was running around. I mean, I was all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was, once I came out of the hospital and said, I need help, I was diagnosed as bipolar.
It's amazing how it takes a crisis sometimes to get to the things that are happening underneath the surface. The depression, well, certainly bipolar didn't cause. Well, I shouldn't. Let me ask you, to what extent do you think your bipolar situations and your depression contributed to the gambling?
It was a tremendous part of it, because what I have, come to find, and from my experience, and doing a lot of reading and doing a lot of deep writing, and honing in on gambling addiction, it's a disease of the mind. And I attribute a lot of, whether it be gambling and lying, cheating, stealing, as I mentioned, some of the other addictions that came and went, all based on character defects. And those character defects are attributed from some type of mental health or emotional issue that I'm not going to label any other compulsive gambler, but I guess you can kind of see that most compulsive gamblers and or addicts in general have some sort of mental health issue, which kind of they're utilizing something, whether it be gambling or some other type of addiction, to self-medicate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah, you're right. There's the sense that I don't like where I am at this moment, or the way I feel at this moment. Let me change things. If it's a substance abuse, let me ingest this. If it's gambling, I'll be, I'll get, the lights are on, the bells are ringing, making money. I got stories to tell. It's just transporting yourself out of a bad place into what you think will be a better place. And we know how that works out. How quickly for you, Matt, when you were hitting it hard, did the slide take place? Because listen, most young guys in this country, overwhelmingly, most young guys in this country like to bet. They will bet fantasy football, all that stuff. All that stuff's geared towards young men. Not all of them become problem gamblers. How quickly did it happen to you?
Oh, it happened very, very quick. Like I said, in my mid-20s, I was basically someone who, wanted to gamble all the time. I gave any type of, I guess, rationalization or justification as to why I want to sit home on a Saturday or Sunday and, have a wager on every single, football game, and, every night of the week, whether it be hockey, basketball, baseball. I mean, I used to say to myself, oh, I'm never going to bet on baseball because that's my favorite sport. And all of a sudden I'm, gambling on baseball, or I don't know anything about, hockey besides, my local team. I'm never going to wager on them, but I'm listening to hockey games and, in French, and the only time I knew who scored was when they said goal, because I couldn't understand the language anyway. But that's how crazy,
Right.
I was, and my life it just started unraveling to the point where, and this is probably something that I'll always kind of hold to my heart, was that it got so bad that at my bachelor party. I was in Atlantic City at a casino, and I was literally down to, nothing. And I asked a buddy of mine who was actually leaving that day, and I said, listen, I need a couple bucks, because if I don't make some money back, I'm not going to be able to pay for my wedding. And he threw me a chip, and thankfully so, I got, I guess somebody up above was looking down at me and said, here, and I made a few bucks. And then, things like that, when you make money, you start to see, the light at the end of the tunnel. You're like, oh my God, I can make all this money. Why don't I continue doing this? And, between the money, the mental health, and the action, and trying to, be involved or fit in with everybody, kind of cumulated, all of that into one piece.
You actually lost the money to pay for your wedding at your bachelor party?
Oh yes, all of it, every
All of
dime, every dime that I had to my name. And I had a pretty expensive wedding. 175 people at my wedding in a synagogue out in Long Island, and it cost me a pretty penny. So thankfully, so otherwise I don't think I'd be married. And I just celebrated my 25th anniversary with my wife back in September. I don't know if we'd be married to this day.
Sounds like you married a stand-up girl.
Oh God, God help me. She's been through. I got
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah, I mean, I said this all the time about substance addiction and recovery. All the stories are the same, except they're different. So we don't want a litany of stuff, but easily you went through all the money. Your marriage is on the brink. Your sons were old enough at some point to go, something's wrong, right?
Well, to be quite honest with you,
Or were you good at hiding it?
no. To be quite honest with you, so my oldest son was born in 2001.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. You start getting better when they're born.
Right. So what happened was kind of like the last thing that really happened, where I started to say to myself, you need some help, was the day after my son was born, and my wife was in the hospital in New York City. I decided that, okay, I'm going to go to Atlantic City while my wife's in the hospital with my son. And I was like, oh, this is the greatest thing. I'll come back with a boatload of money. We'll have some fun. That didn't work out too well. Mm-hmm. So I entered into Gamblers Anonymous in New York City, and went in, and then I went back out for a couple of weeks or so. And then ever since then, I haven't placed a wager since January 16th of 2002.
Well, it's remarkable. As you said at the beginning, maintaining sobriety, no matter what the problem is very difficult.
But my children are fully aware of
your story, yeah.
Everything. Yeah, they know that I'm in Gamblers Anonymous. They know about the meetings I attend, and
Do you worry that there's a family trait here? Because you say your father had a problem too.
Yeah, my father was, as I said, a compulsive gambler. He also was bipolar. My sister's bipolar. So we have an interesting family tree going on here. So
before we get into what you're doing now, because you haven't just moved on, you stayed in the area of helping maintain your control, and you're helping other people. Before we get into that, though, this is something I don't think I've ever asked anybody either. Did you experience cravings when you couldn't gamble, physical cravings when you couldn't gamble, or was it all sort of a mental process?
That's a great question. Well, the way I would answer that today would be more mental. Back then, I think it was just a question of, boredom. I wanted action. So I used any type of excuse to, go gamble or go have fun, party, do whatever it is, that I can do to cause destruction. But now it's all about, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's all about the mental aspect. And as I
Sure.
mentioned, this is a disease of the mind, and it's cunning.
Yeah, yeah, and in that context, it does. There is a physical component to it, even if it's not a classical sense of, you know, I gotta have it. I gotta have it. There's something going on that's organic. It's changed the way you're thinking. That's changing your behavior. Matt Bloom is our guest. We're talking about Matt. Matt does a lot of work now in the area of helping other people maintain control over their compulsive behavior. With regard to gambling, he's now going into 19 years of having his very serious problem under control. So Matt, tell us how you go into GA. It's works for a while. Then you got really involved in it. When did you start hosting or putting together groups to work with other people?
Sure. So as I mentioned, again, I've been in Gamblers Anonymous just under 19 years, and I've been attending meetings, whether they be in a church or synagogue, or I've gone to meetings and on the beach in California while on vacation with my family. Because anytime I go somewhere, I got to get to a meeting. Even when I'm on the road for work, I make sure that I'm at meetings. But that being said, I've always, whether it be chaired a meeting, because that's kind of the term that we use in at least our program and many other 12-step programs, I would chair meetings. And I also have gotten involved in doing some things on social media, like doing live videos and shows and things of that nature. But most recently, since COVID came about, a buddy of mine, we were sitting across, well, we were on the phone, and we were discussing, like, what are we going to do here? We can't go to meetings, and, we like to help people. So when we sponsor and whatnot, what are we going to do? So I said, maybe we should do something on Zoom. And he was like, well, what's Zoom? These guys in the 60s. So we started hosting Zoom meetings back in, it was like the second week of March, to be exact. And we have run a daily Zoom meeting 7 days a week since that time. And we haven't stopped since. So it's been going on and on, these Zoom meetings. And it's kind of been a word of mouth. And we have hundreds of, if not thousands of people coming in and out of these meetings on a daily basis, all over the world, primarily US based, but we have a lot of people. I mean, we have regulars from, Ireland and, Asia and Australia and New Zealand. I mean, these are guys that are like buddies of mine now.
Wow.
We've gotten to work with each other so well. It's been such a blessing. I mean, last night we were on a meeting, we had over 50 people. Monday night's a big night for us, and it's been going really well. And in addition to that, I've also gotten involved in some types of situations similar to this, where I've been doing some interviews, and also there are some Facebook groups that I've been doing some videos on recently. I've actually done a couple on a very large network out there, and I'm going to continue to do those. And also I'm working on building some more of my own brand, because I really do enjoy this. I do this strictly for not only myself, which, it's a selfish program. So I look at myself first, because my recovery comes before anything. And then I'm, looking to, pass the message on, as it says in our steps of recovery. So that's why I do all these things. And again, I don't charge anybody for any of this. Our Zoom meetings are free. Come on and the like.
So for people who might not know, is Gamblers Anonymous? It's a 12-step program. It's just modeled the same way, right?
Yep, 12-step. That's just like they do with AA, NA, and OA, and all of them.
Yep. Yeah. Some people are still confused about this. I mean, when folks ask me all the time, well, I'm not in recovery, but I've talked to lots of people. And when people say to me, come on, AA, does that really work? I'd say it works for the people it works for. And there's millions of them. But I think people still are confused about what, something like AA or GA really is. It's not a treatment per se. It's a support group for like-minded people who want to get better. Is that the way you view it?
Well, first thing I'll say is that Gamblers Anonymous saved my life. And, I've been to, I've taken medications. I've been to psychiatrists. I've been to psychologists. Like I said earlier, I've stayed overnight in hospitals for many days. The only thing that ever helped me not only stop gambling and stop living that destructive way or, thinking and living was Gamblers Anonymous.
Uh-huh.
Working on the steps of recovery is really what changed my life. That's where it kind of went, because for the first 11 years in Gamblers Anonymous, all I did was not place a bet. And I thought that, as long as I don't place a bet, my life's going to be phenomenal. And guess what? In the steps of recovery, in any 12-step program, the second part of step 1 says, life is, unmanageable. I couldn't get past that first step, which was my life. Even after 11 years of not placing a bet, my life was still unmanageable. And then I had to take it to another level. I had to throw my hands up. I couldn't take the pain anymore because I was so addicted. You spoke before about, addictions. I'm also addicted to the word pain, and that's part of the process of being in a 12-step program. Is that's where all it drives from, is from, guilt, fear, and pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to get rid of that pain somehow.
And so, so the surprise and disappointment when you stop the gambling, but the life doesn't get worked out, you got lucky. It led you to the realization that the gambling was a symptom of the problem and that there were problems underneath that. So it's a very strong message. And the people that are struggling, they're out there right now, people are just shaking their heads, oh, no, it won't work for me. It won't work for me. Well, it won't work if you don't try. Let me ask you something about, getting a control on this thing now. In the rooms, what are these other guys telling you? How, for instance, how in the world do they resist the triggers, which we know are things that might result in you doing bad habits, in the environment we live in now, where you can gamble legally or illegally all the time? What are they telling you in the rooms? What are you telling them?
Well, it's funny, you use the word a few times, the word control, and you use the word triggers. First off, if you're in a 12-step program, initially when you come in, you believe in your mind that you can control your addiction. Not only if you stop, you can still control it and abstain from gambling. Well, that's completely, if you do any reading, you can see that that's not true. Number one, you're always going to be a compulsive gambler. There's no two ways about it. I don't care what anybody, at least for me, I actually shouldn't say that. For me, I know I'll always be a compulsive gambler. I can, manage that, but I can't eliminate it. The only thing I can eliminate at any given moment is my character defects whenever I want. So that being said, the way I look at the triggers and the compulsion aspect to it, look, it's simple. We have, literature that, we read daily, our combo book, our day at a time book. And I do a lot of reading. One of the things that I've been, open to, which I'm going to tell you that just from being in the program, I would say probably 98% of the people that are in 12-step programs do not do, which is writing. Now, if you read in the literature, it'll tell you that writing removes the obsession. And not only does it remove the obsession to gamble, it removes other obsessions. And I mean obsession, because again, as I mentioned to you before, I have so many, character defects that I, go out party or, lie to my wife, cheat, steal, everything like that. Now, if I don't continue to do my writing and I don't continue to do my reading, it says in our literature, if you don't make character changes, you'll eventually go back to gambling. It's a given. It's right in the literature.
Yeah.
It says in order to prevent a relapse, one must make a character change. I don't know if that answers your question, but for me,
no, it does. It completely. But so many, this. So many people don't get that. They just think, well, look, this is ridiculous. Don't go into a casino. Don't place a bet on a sporting event. Come on, what's wrong with you? Well, there's a lot wrong with me. I'm working on it. Anyway, we only got a couple of minutes here. Matt, this is a very inspiring story. As I said, you're the first guy who come on to talk to us about compulsive gambling, a huge problem that's as devastating as any other addiction. If people want, I know it doesn't sound like you need more people in these rooms, but if people want more information about you and what you're doing, what do they do?
They could reach out to me by going to a Zoom meeting. They can reach out to me. I actually have a Facebook page, my own, that I kind of just play around with here and there. It's called Recovery Hearts. I've had it for quite some time.
Recovery Hearts?
Yeah, a lot of people post on there. It's a combination of addiction for drugs, alcohol, and gambling. And as I mentioned, I also do a lot of videos. They can see me, for example, tonight, which is tonight's December 8th. I will be hosting a live video myself. I'll be speaking on a Facebook page that is followed by over 7 or 9 million people. It's called Rehabs, and that's with an S, 411, and it's the page, not the group. And I will be speaking live tonight at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. I speak on there quite frequently now.
Well, somebody's going to have to catch you later because we won't post this on our site until after that. But I'm sure you're going to be doing more of this. So you've got your Facebook page, yours, Recovery Hearts, and you often are involved with this Rehabs 411.
And if they want to also send me an email, I got no problem giving out my email. If you want, it's a spider, like a crawling little spider, 989 at bellsouth.net. That's bellsouth.net.
That's great. So we'll post that stuff to our site, and this will be up in early next week. I'd love to get you back again real soon. Have a great holiday, continued success with your work, and thanks for joining us on the corner.
Thanks for having me, Steve. I appreciate it. Happy holidays.
Every storm runs out of rain, according to the great Maya Angelou. Her words can remind us of one very simple truth, that storms do cross our paths, but they don't last forever. So the question remains, how do we ride out this storm of COVID-19 and all the other storms life may throw our way? Where do we turn when issues such as mental health or substance abuse begin to deeply affect our lives? Look to Retreat Behavioral Health. With a team of industry-leading experts, they work tirelessly to provide compassionate, holistic, and affordable treatment. Call to learn more today. 855-802-6600. Retreat Behavioral Health, where healing happens.